Assassin's Creed Unity has always been a hotly debated topic in the larger AC community. I replayed the game 4 years ago and absolutely loved it because to me it represents a modern vision for what the original idea of Assassin's Creed was going to be. So the other day I had a tweet about Unity that got a lot of traction, so I thought why not hop on the mic to further discuss it because I got a lot of interesting responses to that tweet. First off, it started with veteran game developer Del Walker tweeting about Unity and saying how it still has the best crowd system in a video game ever, with thousands of characters moving and a system that scaled their detail depending on how close you were. I saw this and retweeted, there's an alternate reality where Unity's release didn't force Ubi to reboot the series as open world RPGs. Imagine the AC games we could have gotten with this level of crowd density. That's the dream, for me at least. Now I should correct myself on that first part. Origins was apparently in development before Unity, but I still do believe that the successes of games like The Witcher 3 pushed Ubisoft to fully embrace the open world RPG identity that the franchise ultimately switched to, along with the incredibly buggy launch of Unity. That was just like the perfect opportunity for them to say, yeah, we're on the right track internally, let's move forward by rebooting this thing after Syndicate. But anyways, I want to focus on the second part of my tweet more, which is imagine the AC games we could have gotten with this level of crowd density. So crowds, why do crowds matter so much in an Assassin's Creed game? For all the issues that I have with Unity, it is still that game that embodies a modern vision of the assassin fantasy. And for me, it's the last one to really actually attempt that. Syndicate, technically, you could throw into that bucket too, but I think tonally with what Quebec went for, that game is just kind of its own thing. What I'm talking about is that raw original vision, the idea that you're a blade in a crowd moving silently towards your target. Why do the crowds matter? Why do all these NPCs matter? Why does it matter that you're in a city like this? I've always seen the crowds in Assassin's Creed games, particularly the early ones that actually did have crowds, as moving obstacles in the environment. Of course, they're props. They're kind of set dressing that's supposed to bring you into the environment and immerse you and make you believe that you're actually there. But revolutionary France is that perfect setting, and this was the perfect game for them to pull off something like this, to really crowd these streets, make this place feel alive, but also to push you to the rooftops. Crowds are a central part of what I consider, Assassin's Creed, especially the old games, to be, one of the most important elements, which is the fact that it's a city game. Dense urban areas where no matter what, you're able to run from one end of the map to the other along rooftops. You're climbing, you're jumping, you're leaping, you're invisible, you are an assassin. And one of the more interesting replies I got to my tweet and why I wanted to make this video was, yeah, the game was great, but the crowd density was literally the worst part of the game. It made traversing the streets such a pain. And of course, I replied, I love it. It's like a moving obstacle that forces you to the rooftops to engage with parkour, use firecrackers to scatter the crowd. It made the city feel alive to me. It made it feel dynamic. I just don't see how sprinting through streets is more exciting, more engaging than, having the game push back against me and say, hey, no, this is a crowded street area, which, by the way, not every corner in Unity is crowded. There's plenty of empty streets for you to run along, but I see those empty streets as opportunities to climb. I see these crowds as opportunities for me to sneak through them to my target, not as annoying obstacles. So, I wish that the streets were empty. Another hugely underrated aspect of crowds is how you can manipulate them for your advantage. In the early games, you're able to throw money, throw coins in order to gather a crowd around you in order to create a mobile hiding spot. It's so cool. I mean, you're allowed to throw cherry bombs, you're allowed to throw smoke bombs, obviously, to give yourself cover, and you get that cause and effect of, I did something in the video game, this massive crowd of people around me is gonna react to it. So being able to manipulate the crowd to your advantage for a mission or just seeing them react, I think people underrate that aspect of it. Killing criminals on the around you. Oh, everyone's gonna run away in fear because you just killed some people and they're just normal French people going about their day, during the revolution. It is so cool to see crowds as something you could use to your advantage rather than just, like I said, set dressing or window dressing. They are actually pawns. They're pieces you can utilize and they're a part of your toolkit as an assassin. I think that is so cool. And you know what? Crowds are part of the core tenets of the creed. And I know that's annoying to, cite, but it's blend in with the environment, man. Hide in plain sight. That's part of it. So it's just so obvious and so cool. And it's annoying that it doesn't get used anymore. So that's basically why I love it in Unity, why it works so well, and why I've been, just like underwhelmed by the more recent titles and how they did not take advantage of this technology. And again, I think you can totally trace that cause and effect back to Unity's launch and, of course, their ideas about where the franchise should go in the future, since Unity just didn't do very well, for Ubisoft, the company. I think this is less true nowadays, but it used to be, you can trace it through the old Assassin's Creed games, that they were iterating upon ideas and adding onto and improving things that were in previous games. I think the tastes of modern gamers are that we need to be blown away constantly. There needs to be incredible upgrades every single time. Ubisoft obviously isn't able to pull that off because they don't deliver massive upgrades every single time anymore. Games are so much more expensive to make. They're way more complicated than they were before. But it is obviously a shame if you do have a preference for the older style of action-adventure action-adventure Assassin's Creed over the open world action, RPG, whatever you want to call the new games, that they didn't take this tech forward with them. The crowds. As Dell pointed out, no one else has done this, literally since. It's been 11 years. No one has tried to replicate this technology and this achievement to try to do this thing. I remember when Origins was, hadn't come out yet, and there were some articles. I think people asked the lead at Ubisoft Montreal, Ashraf Ismail, about crowds and is there going to be blending? And that's been a constant question with newer games, right? Is it going to have older mechanics from the older games that people fell in love with originally? And I'll never forget his answer, because it was something along the lines of, no, because the game doesn't facilitate that because there are no crowds. And that's true. There are not crowds in Origins. And that's because that's a different game. This was the new vision, right, for Assassin's Creed, the sprawling, massive, open world RPG. Completely different kind of game with different sensibilities catering towards RPG fans versus action-adventure fans. And on paper, you can draw that line. The logic makes perfect sense. We're making this new vision for the franchise over here. We're not concerned about crowds. This is an RPG where you go across an even bigger map and loot and upgrade. You're worried about different things. So I'm saying I don't fault them for going in the direction, because they chose a different direction. And it's not the direction I prefer, but I'm not the one making the games or making the decisions. However, dude, imagine the Assassin's Creed games with this level of crowds that we could have gotten instead of what we have. They wouldn't be set in ancient Egypt, I can tell you that for sure. They wouldn't have been set in ancient Greece and the Mediterranean. They wouldn't have been set in, England and Norway. And they probably wouldn't have been set in Japan, although maybe Kyoto or not Tokyo, whatever the other, ancient city is in Shadows. My point is they would have chosen different locations. And that's why, I can't get excited about new Assassin's Creed as much as I used to, because I know what they're doing. There's little things that kind of get me hyped, but it's not the kind of game for me anymore. Assassin's Creed Hexi is set in Gothic Europe during the witch trials in the Holy Roman Empire, which, on paper sounds sick as hell. Around the insignia, the Creed's maxim is written. It says, "We work in the dark to serve the light." Unfortunately, a lot of that, The Creed itself is more marketing than anything these days, right? It doesn't actually signal this is what you can expect in a video game. I'm interested in the dark setting. I always felt that Assassin's Creed worked more in a very serious, conspiracy-laden, dark environment. But I have no illusions about this game being a city game, right? It's going to be an RPG. That's just my expectation. If it's not, then I'll be shocked. Speculating on what would be awesome settings for Assassin's Creed games is literally a pastime of this community. It's like the fabric of what people talk about online. And that's why it was unfortunate to see recently that Ubisoft last year canceled a post-Civil War Reconstruction era game. And I, again, have no illusions about the fact that that game would have been the open world RPG. That sort of setting just doesn't facilitate what I'm looking for and what I'm talking about. Still would have been cool as hell for all the other reasons. I actually remember making a video a long time ago really requesting the Russian Revolution of the early 20th century. That is such a perfect, more modern time period for them to explore. I mean, we're talking about Russia. We're talking about like a little more modern politics, which is super fascinating. I'm obviously not a history buff if you couldn't tell, but you can look up very little about the Russian Revolution and realize, oh, this is just like perfect. Really, I think you can look at a lot of European cities. There's a lot of fertile ground for a city game, picking an iconic city during the height of that civilization. We got it kind of with AC Mirage and Baghdad. That's why Assassin's Creed Mirage really did feel like a return to form, because it took place during the Islamic Golden Age in Baghdad, in the Ring City. So there are parts of Mirage that I didn't mesh with, particularly with, like young Bassam, and that storyline didn't really stick with me. But I think the vision for that game was pretty good. At the end of the day, I know a video like this is it's pure like pie in the sky stuff. It's speculative. It doesn't have any real basis in reality. I think the reality, unfortunately, at least for me, is that Ubisoft is going to keep making massive open world, very safe RPG games. They're not going to go back to the conspiracy-laden, dark tones of the early games outside of Hexy, which sounds a little bit promising in that, department, especially with how things have been going financially with Ubisoft as a whole. Really not Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed is pretty insulated from the rest of Ubisoft's problems. It still makes plenty of money. I think they're just incentivized from every single angle to keep making what works in their eyes, which is massive open world RPGs set in historical eras. Shadows is a slam dunk in that respect. The real shame on Shadows for me, which I still feel is like an 8 out of 10 video game, is that what would have made it 9 or higher is if it was set in a big ass Japanese city. There's still some outskirts you could visit. I'm not lying to myself. I know the older games, the Ezio games, AC1 with Altair. I know there's some rural sections where you could ride your horse in between locations, but that was just like a very small piece of the pie. The fabric of how you get through an Assassin's Creed game completely changed when they rebooted to Origins. You spend so much time on your horse, so much time navigating an environment in order to get to, activities which just aren't very good in my opinion. Anyways, this isn't a Shadows slander video, even though almost all of my videos turn into that. But anyways, I just wanted to kind of, rant more about this tweet in particular and why crowds are so interesting, and I want to see more of them. Of course, they're not going to revisit this technology, but it's a damn shame, right? It's kind of like the fact that you never see Monolith Studios, because Warner Bros., what did they do? They trademarked the Nemesis system. You don't see that in games because, the Wonder Woman game got canceled, so you're not going to see it in that one. Then they're just going to lock that shit in the vault and not let any other creative minds get their hands on it because of money. I don't think Ubisoft trademarked this crowd system, but holy hell, how has no one else tried to do something like this? I don't know. Even though we're probably not going to see an Assassin's Creed game in the future unless something terrible happens with the franchise and it collapses and stops selling. We're not going to see another Assassin's Creed game use this system, but that doesn't mean we can't look back and appreciate how badass, how awesome this was in Unity and why it was there and what the intention was, because it was awesome. Moving through these crowds gave me such a great feeling and really brought me into the Assassin fantasy of, you know, what these games were trying to achieve. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Those are my thoughts. One of the best things about Unity is absolutely its crowd system. So I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts about this and about my takes. Of course, I know a lot of you will disagree with me, but I'm interested to have a conversation with you guys in the comments below. Let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, remember to hit that like button. I really appreciate it. Also, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this and ring the bell so you don't miss my next one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.